The ministers tonight tell us a narrative that a deal engaged by Culture with a British investment fund is essentially something they can do nothing about. They say they can't instruct Culture to stop the deal even though they don't like it, or to use their term, it's not their preferred option. That's not true. The suggestion that the government, as the owners of Culture, cannot tell that company to disengage from a multi-million euro contract would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. Then to go further to suggest that while they can't instruct Culture in respect of the Gresham House deal, but they have told them to examine other options for the future is, I have to say, cynicism of the highest order. If the government can't stop the Gresham House deal, then how on earth do you expect us to believe that Culture will then adhere to their directions on anything else in the future? Both ministers actually know the truth. Not only were government aware of Culture's plans, those plans were devised in collusion with the government. A small text in a parliamentary question response that I received from you today, Minister, but you didn't repeat here tonight, but I'll put it into the record of the Dáil. It states, and it's the first time I was aware of this, a shareholder letter of execution issued to Culture on the 2nd of June 2022, which included a direction to Culture to, and this is a quote, develop initiatives to support and realise the planting of such forests to a meaningful scale in the years ahead, whether as part of their core business or as participants in a subsidiary or partnership enterprise. It is clear that you were aware of what Culture were planning to do, and that letter of expectation was the go-ahead, the mandate that Culture needed in order to approach Gresham House and make the deal. This isn't something you weren't aware of. You were absolutely aware of it throughout the process, but you kept this House, you kept the Agriculture Committee, you kept the sector, you kept farmers of Ireland completely in the dark, and then you come in before us and you tell us there's nothing we can do, the deal is already made. It is absolute cynicism. It is the reason we have a crisis in forestry. It is the reason why we're failing to reach our targets. What we have now is a deal that will see a venture owned by a British investment fund purchase thousands of hectares of Irish land. Most of that land, as the Minister herself uses in defence of it, is actually already forested. Only 3.5 out of 12,000 hectares is actually new afforestation. So where does that fit into any climate action plan? This will see prices inflated beyond the reach of most family farmers. This deal will see Irish taxpayers' money, tens of millions of it, being used to subsidise the actual purchase of land by a British investment company. And you've cited this notion, this laughable figure, oh, it's only 1% of the overall target. Imagine having faced the challenges that you're facing on your first 1%, what hope do we have that this government has any prospect of reaching the further 99% that's actually required in order for us to reach our climate action targets? Now, anybody looking at this, anybody looking at how these investment funds and think that this is stopping at 12,000 hectares needs to have their head examined. Gresham House own, at the moment, across Britain, 140,000 hectares of afforestation land worth €1.8 billion. To suggest that they would even contemplate coming into the Irish market for what is, in the grand scheme of their operations, pittance, is again laughable, and it doesn't stack up to it. So the questions that you still haven't answered, because there's been lots of rhetoric around state aid, and your department, as you acknowledged last Thursday at a briefing, have actually for most of the past year been in discussions with the European Commission around state aid rules. So have you put the question to them at even once? What do you need to do to ensure that Culture can draw down state aid rules and not have to rely on a British investment firm? My belief is that the question wasn't even put. Have you looked at your afforestation programme to see whether or not you can actually prevent millions of euro actually being siphoned out of the country, whether you can actually devise a forestry programme that goes to farmers, to landowners, local communities and public bodies, but not to British-held investment companies? That would be a solution. We know how to get to the afforestation rates that we need because we've done it before. Way after 2004, when Culture were impacted by the state aid rules. In 2010, we matched the 8,000 hectares of land being afforested. Who did it? It was the farmers of Ireland. They did it. We were on the right trajectory, but due to incompetence primarily, bureaucracy and lack of vision on the part of your department, we have seen it get worse and worse every year since, to the point where we are now planting the lowest rates of afforestation since the Second World War. I know why. It's because we have incompetent ministers, an incompetent forestry section, and now we have the cynicism of you coming in here today night and speaking against the motion that you intend to vote in favour of it. That's cynicism of the highest order, and that's the reason why communities, farmers and landowners right across the country have disengaged from the forestry programme.